The Crothian Empire had ruled over 40 star systems for 3,000 years, and their power was absolute across the entire Andromeda sector. Every species that encountered their fleets either surrendered immediately or faced complete destruction. The Crothians believed in a simple philosophy that had served them well throughout their history. Strength was the only currency that mattered in the universe, and mercy was nothing more than a weakness that led to defeat. Their warships were painted black with red markings that symbolized the blood of conquered worlds, and their crews were trained from birth to show no compassion to anyone they deemed inferior. Admiral Vecthar stood on the bridge of his flagship called the Desolation and looked at the holographic display showing a small blue and green planet. This world was designated as New Haven by the primitive species that had recently established a colony there. The humans were newcomers to this region of space, and Vecthar had studied their basic information with mild curiosity. They came from a single world far away and had only recently developed faster than light travel. Their technology seemed adequate for simple space travel, but nothing that could challenge Crothian military superiority. The Empire had encountered dozens of species just like them over the centuries, and the pattern was always the same. Vecthar commanded a fleet of 12 warships, which was standard for subjugation missions against minor colonies. His second-in-command approached him with a report stating that the human settlement contained approximately 5,000 individuals. Most of them appeared to be civilians, including families with children. There were no significant military installations and only basic defensive capabilities. The admiral nodded slowly and prepared the standard ultimatum that the Empire delivered to all new species. They would be given 72 hours to accept Crothian rule and pay tribute or face orbital bombardment, followed by ground invasion. On the surface of New Haven, Commander Jake Morrison walked through the main settlement and felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. He had served in Earth's colonial defense force for 15 years before taking this assignment. The colony was his dream come true after spending so much time on military vessels. Here, he could help build something new and positive for humanity's future. The colonists had spent 2 years establishing farms and research stations and schools for their children. They had chosen this world because it was far from the conflicts and politics of Earth. They wanted peace and the chance to start fresh. Jake received the alert from the orbital sensors at 600 hours and immediately knew something was wrong. 12 massive ships had entered the system and were moving toward New Haven with clear hostile intent. He rushed to the communications center where his small staff had already begun analyzing the situation. The vessels were larger than anything humanity had built, and their energy signatures indicated powerful weapon systems. Within minutes, the lead ship broadcast a message across all frequencies in multiple languages, including English. The voice that came through the speakers was harsh and mechanical. It stated that the Crothian Empire claimed this system and all resources within it. The human colony was ordered to surrender unconditionally and accept imperial rule. Resistance would result in complete annihilation. The colonists had 72 hours to respond. Jake listened to the entire message twice before making his decision. He gathered the colony council in the emergency meeting room and explained the situation. Several council members argued for immediate surrender to save lives. Others insisted they should fight back even though they had no real weapons. Jake understood both perspectives, but he also knew there was a third option. He activated the long-range communications array and sent a priority distress signal toward Earth. The message would take time to reach Naval Command, but Jake included all the information he had about the Crothian fleet. He described their numbers and their ultimatum, and requested immediate assistance. After sending the signal, he addressed the entire colony through the public announcement system. His voice was calm and steady even though his heart was racing. He told everyone that they would not surrender without consulting Earth. He ordered all families to move into the underground shelters that had been built for emergency situations. All non-essential personnel were to remain below ground until further notice. The colonists responded with remarkable discipline despite their fear. Parents gathered their children and headed to the designated shelter areas. Scientists secured their research and backed up all data. The small security force began distributing the limited weapons they had, which consisted mostly of hunting rifles and basic energy pistols. Jake knew these weapons would be useless against warships, but having something to defend themselves gave people hope. He coordinated the evacuation while maintaining constant watch on the Crothian fleet. Vecthar observed the human colony's movements with satisfaction. They were hiding underground like frightened animals, which was exactly what he expected. The Admiral had seen this behavior countless times before. Species always believed they could wait for rescue or find some diplomatic solution. They never understood that the Crothian Empire did not negotiate with inferiors. He ordered his fleet to maintain position just outside the planet's orbital space. His crews ran combat drills and prepared weapon systems. The humans would watch their fleet and feel their own helplessness grow with each passing hour. Jake spent the next 2 days coordinating shelter assignments and maintaining morale. He visited each underground section and spoke with families. He promised them that Earth would respond because humanity never abandoned its own. Many people wanted to believe him, but doubt was visible in their eyes. How could anyone reach them in time when Earth was 600 light-years away? The colony's small transport ships could not outrun Crothian warships, and any attempt to evacuate would result in immediate attack. They were trapped and everyone knew it. On the third morning, Jake stood in the command center watching the countdown timer. Less than 12 hours remained before the ultimatum expired. The Crothian fleet had moved closer and was now in optimal firing position. Vecthar sent another message demanding the colony's final answer. Jake prepared to respond when suddenly the long-range sensors detected something impossible. A massive energy signature had appeared at the edge of the system. The readings indicated a single vessel traveling at speeds that should not be possible. The ship was moving directly toward New Haven and broadcasting identification codes. Jake's hands trembled as he read the message. The USS Relentless had arrived, and humanity's answer to the Crothian Empire was about to be delivered in a way that would shake the foundations of galactic power forever. Fleet Admiral Catherine Walsh sat in her office at Earth Naval Command and stared at the distress signal that had arrived from New Haven Colony. The message had taken weeks to reach Earth through the relay stations, and every word filled her with cold anger. The Crothian Empire was a name she recognized from intelligence reports. They controlled a significant portion of the Andromeda sector and had a reputation for brutality. Their standard procedure was to crush any resistance and enslave populations. Catherine had spent 30 years in the Colonial Defense Force and had seen many threats to humanity. But this situation was different. She immediately convened an emergency session with the Defense Council. Military leaders and government officials gathered in the secure conference room. Catherine presented all available information about the Crothian fleet and their capabilities. The intelligence was limited because humanity had never directly engaged them before. What they did know was concerning. Crothian warships were heavily armed and their crews were experienced in combat. The nearest Earth fleet was 3 weeks away from New Haven, even at maximum speed. By the time reinforcements arrived, the colony would likely be destroyed or captured. One council member suggested they negotiate with the Crothians and offer some kind of compensation. Catherine rejected this idea immediately. Showing weakness to an aggressive empire would only invite more attacks on human colonies. Another member proposed sending a diplomatic envoy to buy time. Catherine knew this would not work either. The Crothians had given a 72-hour ultimatum and would not extend it. The council argued for 2 hours before Catherine revealed the option she had been considering since the distress signal arrived. The USS Relentless was humanity's newest and most advanced warship. It had been commissioned 6 months ago and was still completing its testing phase. The ship represented a quantum leap in human military technology. Its design incorporated experimental systems that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The quantum drive could cross distances in days that would take conventional ships weeks or months. The weapon systems were built using theories that most scientists barely understood. The Relentless was designed to be humanity's answer to any threat in the galaxy. Catherine proposed sending the ship to New Haven immediately. Several council members objected to this plan. The Relentless had not completed all its trials, and sending it into combat was risky. The crew was still learning how to operate the advanced systems. Most importantly, the ship would be facing 12 enemy vessels alone. Catherine listened to all the objections before responding with simple logic. The Relentless was built for exactly this kind of situation. If they did not use it now to save 5,000 human lives, then what was the purpose of building it? The council took a vote and approved her plan by a narrow margin. Captain Ryan Edwards received his orders while the Relentless was conducting weapons tests near Jupiter. He read the message 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. His ship was being sent to New Haven to face a Crothian fleet. The testing phase was over, and this was now a combat mission. Ryan had commanded smaller vessels before, but the Relentless was his first capital ship. He was 42 years old and had earned his position through years of service. Now he would have to prove that Earth's faith in him was justified. He called his senior officers to the briefing room and explained the situation. Lieutenant Nina Cole was his tactical officer, and she immediately began analyzing the available data on Crothian military capabilities. Chief Engineer Danny Ross started calculating the stress on the quantum drive if they pushed it beyond normal parameters. Navigation Officer Lisa Grant plotted the fastest course to New Haven. Medical Officer Peter Hall prepared the sickbay for potential casualties. Every department head understood the gravity of their mission. Ryan addressed his entire crew through the ship-wide communication system. He explained that they were heading to New Haven to protect human colonists from an Imperial fleet. He did not hide the facts about the numbers they would face or the danger involved. He told everyone that this mission was voluntary, and anyone who wished to request transfer could do so without prejudice. Many crew members had families back on Earth and Mars. Ryan gave them 1 hour to make their decision. He waited in his quarters and wondered how many would choose to leave. After 60 minutes passed, Ryan checked the transfer requests. The list was empty. Not a single member of his 800 crew had asked to leave. He felt pride swell in his chest. These men and women understood what it meant to serve. They knew the risks, but they also knew that humanity's strength came from protecting each other. Ryan returned to the bridge and gave the order to depart. The Relentless left Jupiter orbit and engaged its quantum drive. Space seemed to bend around the ship as it accelerated to speeds that conventional physics said were impossible. The journey took 5 days, and during that time the crew prepared for battle. Nina ran countless combat simulations against Crothian fleet formations. Danny monitored every system on the ship and made adjustments to optimize performance. The weapons crews practiced loading and firing drills until they could do it in complete darkness. The pilots trained on the fighter craft stored in the launch bays. Everyone knew their role and everyone was ready. Ryan spent his time studying everything humanity knew about the Crothian Empire. Their society was built on military conquest, and they viewed other species as either subjects or enemies. They had no concept of diplomacy as equals. Their technology was advanced but appeared to rely on brute force rather than innovation. Crothian ships were heavily armored but slower than human vessels. Their weapons were powerful but lacked precision. Ryan began to see patterns that might give him an advantage. On the 5th day, the Relentless dropped out of quantum drive at the edge of the New Haven system. The timing was deliberate. Ryan had calculated their arrival to be 4 hours before the Crothian ultimatum expired. He wanted the Empire to know that humanity responded quickly to threats. The sensor display showed 12 enemy warships in orbit around the planet. Ryan ordered his crew to battle stations and felt the ship come alive around him. Every system powered up and every crew member moved to their assigned position. Ryan opened a communications channel to New Haven Colony. His message was brief and meant to provide hope. He identified his ship and told the colonists to remain in their shelters. Jake Morrison's response came back immediately with relief and gratitude. Ryan then turned his attention to the Crothian fleet. He had Nina broadcast a message on all frequencies. The words were simple and direct. The Crothian fleet was ordered to withdraw from New Haven space immediately. This was their only warning. Ryan knew what would happen next, but he needed to give them the chance to leave peacefully. The Relentless moved forward, and humanity prepared to show the galaxy what happened when someone threatened their people. Admiral Vecthar was reviewing the final bombardment plans when his sensor officer reported an anomaly at the edge of the system. A single vessel had emerged from faster-than-light travel and was broadcasting identification codes. The ship was large but not exceptional by Crothian standards. Vecthar ordered his tactical officer to analyze the newcomer. The readings showed advanced power systems and unusual energy signatures, but nothing that seemed threatening. What puzzled Vecthar was why the humans would send only one ship. Perhaps this was a diplomatic vessel coming to negotiate surrender terms. The human ship broadcast a message across all frequencies, and Vecthar listened with growing amusement. The vessel identified itself as the USS Relentless, and its captain was ordering the Crothian fleet to withdraw immediately. Vecthar looked at his bridge crew and saw them struggling not to laugh. In 3,000 years of Crothian military history, no one had ever made such a demand of their fleet. The audacity was almost admirable in its foolishness. Vector decided to respond personally because he wanted to educate these primitive humans about their place in the galaxy. He opened a channel to the Relentless, and his image appeared on their screens. Vector was an imposing figure with dark-scaled skin and eyes that glowed red in the dim light of his bridge. He spoke in heavily accented English because he wanted the humans to understand every word. He explained that the Crothian Empire had conquered 100 worlds and crushed every species that dared to resist. Their military power was absolute, and their fleet had never known defeat. The human colony would surrender or be destroyed, and this single ship would be added to the list of foolish gestures that changed nothing. Captain Ryan Edwards listened to Vector's speech without interruption. He sat in his command chair and watched the Crothian admiral posture and threaten. Nina stood at her tactical station and monitored the enemy fleet's movements. Danny was in engineering, making final adjustments to the power distribution. Every member of the bridge crew was calm and focused. When Vector finished his speech, Ryan leaned forward slightly and activated his communication system. His voice was steady and cold as ice. Ryan told Vector that the Crothian Empire had made a fatal mistake by threatening human lives. They had attacked a peaceful colony, and now they would learn a lesson that would echo through history. Humanity did not negotiate with tyrants and did not bow to threats. The people of New Haven were under Earth's protection, and anyone who harmed them would face consequences. Ryan paused and looked directly into the camera. He said the words that would be remembered for generations. The Crothians would now learn why humanity does not fear the darkness between stars, because humans were born in that darkness. Vector's amusement turned to anger at the humans' defiance. He cut the communication channel and ordered his fleet to destroy the Relentless immediately. 12 warships began moving into attack formation. Their weapon systems powered up and targeting computers locked onto the human vessel. Vector was confident this would be over in minutes. The humans had courage, but courage without power was meaningless. He watched his tactical display and waited for the first salvo to be fired. On the Relentless, Ryan gave a series of quick orders. Nina activated the combat systems and the ship's exterior lights dimmed as power was redirected to weapons and shields. Danny confirmed that all reactors were operating at full capacity. The fighter pilots were standing by in their cockpits ready to launch if needed. Ryan looked at his crew and felt proud of each one of them. They were about to face impossible odds, and not one person showed fear. He took a deep breath and spoke the words that began the battle. The Crothian fleet fired first as expected. Hundreds of plasma bolts streaked through space toward the Relentless. Missiles launched from multiple ships, creating a wave of explosive warheads. The attack was designed to overwhelm any defensive systems through sheer volume. Vector watched his screens and prepared to witness the destruction of the human ship. What happened next would change everything he believed about warfare. The Relentless point defense grid activated, and the space around the ship lit up with defensive fire. Automated turrets tracked and destroyed incoming projectiles with perfect accuracy. Every plasma bolt was intercepted. Every missile was shot down before reaching its target. The human ship emerged from the attack without a single hit to its hull. Vector stared at his display in disbelief. No species had ever survived that kind of concentrated fire. His sensor officer reported that the human shields had not even been tested yet, because nothing had gotten close enough. Ryan ordered Nina to return fire, and the Relentless showed the galaxy what human weapons could do. The railgun batteries along the ship's spine activated, and the entire vessel shuddered slightly. Tungsten projectiles the size of small cars accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. There was no energy signature to warn the enemy. No bright beams or colorful bolts, just solid metal moving at velocities that made them as destructive as small nuclear weapons. The first 3 rounds hit the Crothian ship called Bloodfang and passed completely through its hull. The Bloodfang simply disintegrated. Its armor and shields meant nothing against kinetic weapons moving at such incredible speeds. The ship broke apart in a massive explosion that sent debris flying in all directions. The other Crothian vessels immediately took evasive action. Vector's bridge crew was shouting reports about the impossibility of what they had just witnessed. How could a single projectile weapon destroy a warship that had survived dozens of major battles? The admiral struggled to understand what was happening. Ryan did not give them time to recover. He ordered the Relentless to advance, and the ship moved forward with surprising speed for its size. Nina coordinated the weapon systems and fired again. 2 more Crothian ships were hit and suffered catastrophic damage. Their hulls ruptured and atmosphere vented into space. One ship tried to return fire, but the Relentless was already moving to a new position. The human vessel was faster and more maneuverable than anything Vecthar had encountered. The Crothian fleet scattered and tried to surround the Relentless using their numerical advantage. This was a standard tactic that had worked against larger enemy forces. Vecthar ordered his ships to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. He was certain that even if the human weapons were powerful, they could not target everything at once. His remaining 9 ships moved into position and prepared for a coordinated assault. Vecthar was about to learn another lesson about human military technology. The Relentless rotated smoothly and brought different weapon systems to bear on each target. The ship had been designed to fight in any direction simultaneously. Missile tubes opened along the hull and launched smart munitions that could track targets independently. Laser batteries provided covering fire while the main railguns recharged. Nina coordinated everything from her tactical station with the help of the ship's advanced computer systems. The Relentless fought like a living creature that could see in all directions at once. 3 more Crothian ships were destroyed in the next exchange of fire. Vecthar watched his fleet being systematically eliminated and felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. Fear began to creep into his thoughts as he realized the humans were not just winning this battle, but dominating it completely. His proud fleet that had terrorized dozens of species was being torn apart by a single enemy vessel. He looked at his remaining ships and made a decision that would haunt him forever. The battle had been raging for only 12 minutes and already half of Vecthar's fleet was destroyed or disabled. The Crothian admiral stood on his bridge and watched his tactical display with growing horror. Each red icon that disappeared represented hundreds of crew members and years of military tradition. The humans were not just defeating his fleet but making it look easy. Every attack the Crothians launched was countered perfectly. Every defensive position they took was broken within seconds. Vecthar had commanded fleets for 40 years, and never imagined he would witness such one-sided destruction. Captain Ryan Edwards maintained his focus as the battle continued. He felt no satisfaction in the destruction, only determination to protect the colony. Nina called out target priorities and coordinated fire control. Danny reported that all systems were operating within acceptable parameters despite the sustained combat. The quantum reactor was providing more than enough power for weapons and shields. The Relentless had been built to fight multiple enemies simultaneously, and now it was proving the worth of every credit. Spent on its construction, 4 Crothian ships remained operational, and they were attempting to regroup. Vecthar ordered them to concentrate their fire on one section of the human ship. If they could breach the hull in one location, they might be able to cause critical damage. His weapons officers locked onto the Relentless engines and fired everything they had. Plasma cannons and particle beams converged on a single point. For a moment, Vecthar hoped that concentrated fire would succeed where volume had failed. The Relentless shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the incoming energy. Nina monitored the shield strength and reported that they were holding at 90% capacity. The Crothian weapons were powerful, but human defensive technology was simply superior. Ryan decided it was time to end this battle decisively. He ordered Nina to activate the Hellstorm missile system. This was the Relentless' most devastating weapon, and it had never been tested in actual combat. The entire bridge crew knew what was coming and braced themselves. Launch tubes opened along the Relentless hull, and 50 missiles emerged in rapid succession. Each warhead was equipped with advanced guidance systems and enough explosive power to cripple a capital ship. The missiles scattered across the battlefield and began tracking their assigned targets independently. The Crothian point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but the missiles were too fast and too agile. They dodged and weaved through defensive fire like living creatures hunting prey. The first missile struck the Crothian ship called Darkblade directly in its engineering section. The explosion tore through multiple decks and disabled the main reactor. Secondary explosions followed as stored ammunition cooked off. The ship went dark and began drifting. 3 more missiles hit the same vessel and it broke apart completely. The remaining Crothian ships tried to maneuver, but there was nowhere to hide. Space was filled with incoming warheads that adjusted their approach with every evasion attempt. 2 more Crothian vessels suffered catastrophic hits and were left burning in space. Their crews abandoned ship in escape pods, hoping the humans would show mercy. Vecthar watched this unfold and felt his world crumbling around him. The Empire's military doctrine was based on intimidation and overwhelming force. They had never developed strategies for fighting from a position of weakness, because they had never been weak before. Now his crews were fleeing in terror from an enemy they had mocked just minutes ago. Only 2 Crothian ships remained functional, the Desolation and 1 escort called Crimson Fang. Vecthar looked at his tactical display and accepted the reality of his situation. He had lost the battle completely. His fleet was destroyed. His reputation was ruined. Everything he had built over decades was gone. He had one final decision to make, and it was the hardest choice of his life. He could continue fighting until both remaining ships were destroyed, or he could attempt to flee and bring word of this disaster back to the Empire. Ryan watched the 2 surviving Crothian ships break formation and turn away from the planet. Their engines powered up to maximum thrust, and they began accelerating toward the edge of the system. He knew immediately what they were attempting. Vecthar was running. The proud admiral who had threatened to destroy the colony was now fleeing like a frightened animal. Ryan considered destroying both ships, but then he had a better idea. He told Nina to disable their engines without destroying the vessels completely. Nina targeted the Crimson Fang first because it was the smaller ship. 2 precise railgun shots hit its engine compartment, and the vessel went dead in space. The Desolation was next, and Nina took extra care with this shot. She wanted to leave Vecthar alive to deliver a message. The railgun round hit the flagship's main drive and disabled it, but left the rest of the ship intact. Both Crothian vessels were now stranded with minimal power and no way to escape. Ryan opened a communications channel to the Desolation and waited for Vecthar to respond. The Crothian admiral appeared on screen, and he looked like a broken man. His earlier arrogance was gone and replaced by shock and disbelief. Ryan studied Vecthar's face for a moment before speaking. He told the admiral that this battle was over and the colony was safe. The Crothian Empire had learned an important lesson today. Humanity was not prey to be hunted or slaves to be conquered. They were a species that would defend their own with everything they had. Ryan's voice was calm, but his words carried weight. Ryan explained that he was going to let Vecthar live and even provide minimal repairs to get his ship home. This was not mercy but calculated strategy. Vecthar would return to the Crothian Empire and tell them exactly what happened at New Haven. He would describe how a single human warship destroyed an entire fleet. He would explain that humanity possessed technology and weapons that made Crothian military might look primitive. Most importantly, he would deliver a clear message to the Empire and every other aggressive species in the galaxy. The message was simple but profound. Humanity wanted peace and cooperation with other species. They had come to the stars seeking knowledge and friendship. They would trade fairly and negotiate honestly with anyone who approached them in good faith. But if any species threatened human lives or attacked human colonies, they would discover that humanity could be as terrible as they were generous. Earth would protect its people with every resource at its disposal. The Relentless was only one ship, and humanity had more like it under construction. Vecthar listened to Ryan's words and understood what was being offered. He would be allowed to live, but only as a messenger. His career was finished and his honor was destroyed, but he could still serve one final purpose. He could prevent other Crothian fleets from making the same mistake. The admiral nodded slowly and accepted these terms. He had no choice and no pride left to salvage. Ryan ordered his engineering teams to provide basic repairs to the Desolation systems. Enough power to reach Crothian space, but not enough to fight or threaten anyone. The battle had lasted 17 minutes from first shot to final outcome. In that brief time, the Crothian fleet had been effectively eliminated. 10 ships destroyed completely, 2 ships disabled and captured, 0 damage to the Relentless beyond superficial shield impacts. The one-sided nature of the engagement sent shockwaves through every species monitoring the confrontation. Many civilizations maintained observation posts in nearby systems, and they had recorded everything. The footage would spread across the galaxy within weeks. Ryan ordered the Relentless to take up position in orbit above New Haven. He sent a message to Jake Morrison, telling him that the threat was over and the colonists could return to their homes. The relief in Jake's response was clear and emotional. 5,000 people had been saved, and humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in the most dramatic way imaginable. Ryan sat in his command chair and felt exhaustion wash over him. His crew had performed perfectly, and their ship had exceeded every expectation. Now they would wait for the situation to stabilize before returning to Earth. The underground shelters of New Haven Colony slowly emptied as families emerged into the daylight. Children who had spent 3 terrifying days below ground blinked in the sunlight and looked up at the sky. Parents held them close and whispered that everything would be okay now. Jake Morrison stood at the entrance to the main shelter and watched his people return to their homes. Above them in orbit, the USS Relentless maintained its protective position like a guardian angel made of metal and fire. The colonists could see debris from destroyed Crothian ships burning up in the atmosphere like shooting stars. Each streak of light represented a threat that would never harm them. Captain Ryan Edwards remained on the bridge of the Relentless for another 6 hours, coordinating the aftermath of the battle. His crew worked efficiently to catalog the wreckage and scan for survivors in the escape pods. They found several dozen Crothian crew members who had abandoned their ships, and Ryan ordered them brought aboard as prisoners. Medical officer Peter Hall treated their injuries without prejudice. The prisoners were confused by this treatment, because Crothian military doctrine did not include mercy for defeated enemies. Peter explained that humans valued life even when it belonged to their adversaries. Admiral Vecthar supervised repairs to the Desolation from his damaged bridge. Human engineering teams had provided basic components and technical assistance, but made it clear this was a one-time gesture. The repairs would allow his flagship to limp back to Crothian space, but nothing more. Vecthar spent hours writing his official report, knowing that it would likely end his career and possibly his life. The Crothian Empire did not tolerate failure, and losing an entire fleet to a single enemy vessel was unprecedented. He included every detail of the battle because other Crothian commanders needed to understand what they would face if they challenged humanity. Ryan received continuous updates from Earth as news of the battle spread through human space. Admiral Catherine Walsh sent her congratulations and informed him that the Defense Council was reviewing the engagement data. Politicians and military leaders were already debating the implications of what happened at New Haven. Some argued that humanity should pursue aggressive expansion now that their military superiority was proven. Others insisted they should focus on defensive preparations and peaceful exploration. Catherine told Ryan to ignore the politics and focus on his mission. He had done exactly what Earth needed him to do. On the surface, Jake Morrison organized a colony-wide gathering to thank the crew of the Relentless. Ryan agreed to attend with a small group of officers. They took a shuttle down to the main settlement and were greeted by thousands of grateful colonists. Children presented them with handmade banners and drawings. Adults shook their hands and offered heartfelt thanks. Jake gave a speech describing the 3 days of fear they had endured and the relief they felt when the Relentless arrived. He said that Earth might be 600 light-years away, but its protection reached across the darkness to keep them safe. Ryan stood before the crowd and felt uncomfortable with the hero worship he saw in their eyes. He explained that he and his crew had simply done their duty. The Relentless was built by thousands of engineers and scientists who never received recognition. The ship's existence was only possible because Earth's entire civilization had committed resources to protecting its colonies. Every person who paid taxes or worked in defense industries had contributed to their rescue. Ryan said that humanity's strength came from unity and the willingness to help each other regardless of distance or danger. The celebration lasted into the evening, and Ryan found himself talking with colonists from different backgrounds. Scientists explained their research into the planet's unique ecosystem. Farmers described their plans for expanding agricultural production. Teachers talked about the school they were building for the children. These were ordinary people pursuing ordinary dreams, and Ryan realized that protecting them was not just about military duty. It was about preserving humanity's ability to hope and build and create even in the vastness of space. After 2 days, the Desolation was ready to depart. Vecthar sent a final message to Ryan requesting permission to leave the system. Ryan granted it, but included a warning. If Crothian ships ever returned to human space with hostile intent, they would face the same fate. Vecthar acknowledged this, and his damaged flagship slowly accelerated away from New Haven. The journey home would take weeks, and Vecthar knew he was traveling toward an uncertain future. He had lost everything, but at least he would deliver the message that might prevent more Crothian deaths. Ryan prepared the Relentless for its return to Earth. The ship had performed beyond expectations, and Danny reported only minor maintenance issues. The crew was in high spirits despite their exhaustion. They had faced impossible odds and won decisively. Nina compiled a detailed after-action report that would be studied by military academers for years. The data showed that human weapons technology was at least 2 generations ahead of anything the Crothians possessed. The quantum drive gave humanity strategic mobility that no other species could match. The Relentless was not just a warship, but proof that human innovation could overcome any challenge. Before departing, Ryan received a communication from an unexpected source. A species called the Verdani had observed the battle from a nearby system and wanted to establish diplomatic contact with Earth. They had been paying tribute to the Crothian Empire for 500 years and were inspired by humanity's defiance. Ryan forwarded their message to Earth and suggested that Catherine might want to send a diplomatic team. This was exactly the kind of development that made the battle's outcome even more significant. Humanity had not just defended a colony but potentially gained allies and changed the balance of power in the entire sector. The Relentless engaged its quantum drive and departed New Haven system. The colonists watched from the surface as the great warship vanished in a flash of distorted spacetime. Jake Morrison stood with his family and looked up at the stars. His daughter asked him if the bad aliens would come back. Jake knelt down and told her that Earth would always protect them. Humanity had proven that distance meant nothing when their people were threatened. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but humans faced it together. Admiral Catherine Walsh was waiting when the Relentless arrived back at Earth 3 weeks later. The ship was greeted by a fleet of escorts and civilian vessels that wanted to witness its triumphant return. Ryan and his crew were treated as heroes, but Catherine made sure they understood their responsibility. The battle at New Haven was just the beginning. Other aggressive species would hear about the Crothian defeat and make their own calculations. Some would avoid human space out of fear. Others might see humanity as a threat that needed to be eliminated before it grew stronger. Earth needed to be prepared for both possibilities. Ryan accepted a promotion to Commodore and was given command of a new squadron being formed around the Relentless. 3 more ships of similar design were under construction and would be operational within a year. Catherine asked him to train the new captains and develop tactical doctrine for humanity's expanding defense forces. Ryan agreed but asked for one condition. He wanted Jake Morrison transferred from New Haven and given a position at the Naval Academy. Jake had kept his colony together during the crisis and deserved recognition. Catherine approved the request immediately. 6 months after the battle at New Haven, the galactic situation had changed dramatically. The Crothian Empire withdrew from several border systems and ceased all expansion efforts. Their military was reorganizing and developing new strategies based on Vekthar's report. The Verdani and 3 other species formally requested diplomatic relations with Earth. Trade agreements were signed and cultural exchanges began. Humanity found itself emerging as a major power much faster than anyone had anticipated. Ryan Edwards stood on the observation deck of the Relentless and looked at Earth floating peacefully below. He thought about how quickly everything had changed. 1 year ago, humanity was a minor species barely venturing beyond its own solar system. Now they were respected and feared across dozens of star systems. The responsibility was enormous, but Ryan believed humanity was ready for it. They had always been explorers and defenders. They had always protected their own and reached out to others in friendship. Those qualities would serve them well in the larger galaxy. The Empire had trembled when a single human battleship arrived at New Haven, and that tremor had echoed across the stars. Humanity had proven that courage and innovation could overcome numerical superiority. They had shown that protecting the weak was not weakness but strength. Most importantly, they had announced to every species in the galaxy that Earth's children would not be bullied or conquered. The stars belonged to everyone, and humanity would claim their place among them with honor and determination. The age of human expansion had truly begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.